Well, with scanning percentages down and animal health problems increasing, the hangover of an extended drought in the lower central North Island has left many farmers with a headache they could do without. Colin Williscroft from Farmers Weekly has done a survey of vets across the region, as well as sheep scanners, to deep dive into the issue. More at farmersweekly.co.nz or in your Farmers Weekly newspaper that's out this week. Vet Services Hawke's Bay Managing Director Richard Hilson joins us now to give advice to farmers navigating the animal health challenges. Richard, there's plenty of fresh grass for production in the recent times, but the flip side of that for some farmers is not so great health-wise. Could you further explain?
Oh, well, I think it probably still depends a bit where you are. That there is some greenery, and I think probably everyone's got a bit of green, and some people have got enough green. So yeah, partly it's just getting enough feed into animals would be the first instance. I think the thing that piqued a bit of interest lately is the amount of milk fever that we're having with ewes. And to be honest, just lately probably not really getting the responses we like in terms of treating them either. It's a bit complicated, I think, by the ewe condition.
Okay, so talking about getting as much feed into them as possible, what is the sort of change nutrient-wise when you go from such a sort of devastating drought condition and the mineral makeup that is creating some of these problems when you get that flush?
Generally, it's a reasonably sort of gradual thing. I mean, you've got no grass, and then suddenly you've got some grass growing, so the animals are getting a chance to adjust their diet. There's probably some of it's actually man-made. There's animals on a real variety of supplements, and clearly we were really low in supplements. So people are mixing and matching a little bit, and so at those sort of periods, we've actually got problems with severe dietary changes, like maize suddenly starting or suddenly stopping, swapping from lots of maize and silage to chucking in some fruit or something, which there's been a bit of that around. So those are issues you create because you just upset their guts.
Yeah, and particularly grain as well was being pushed heavily, but the transition onto grain must be transition off it as well.
Yeah, transition off is not too bad sometimes. In a normal season, you can do it pretty much at a flick of a hat. It's not really a big issue. But I think we have just recently, this last few days, we've had at least one property locally who's induced a bit of milk fever by doing that. So it is something to watch out for. So that the issue now we've got with milk fever is really about the things that are happening in the short term for animals. Ewes that are coming in preset stocking, be vaccinated, is probably spending a little bit long off pasture. They're not really set up to be long off pasture because they're not necessarily in great nick, and they need to get back out as quick as they can, basically.
What about with regards to mistaking diseases for different things? What are some of those signs that farmers should be looking out for?
Depends a bit what you're looking for, to be honest. I mean, the amount of diseases hasn't gone away. I think as an example, if you're scanning, you're not that likely to see sleepy sickness. It's much more likely that what you're looking at if you've got a ewe down is milk fever. So that's what you should be aiming your treatment at. But milk fever is often complicated by sleepy sickness, especially if you're a bit slow out of the blocks. And you've got to make sure, in that case, for instance, you treat the milk fever first and the sleepy sickness second. A sort of complicating factor there probably needs a bit of explanation is milk fever is low calcium. And if you've got low calcium, your muscles aren't working, and that's everything. Every muscle's not working. So it's your guts, your heart, the ones that make you run away from the dogs and the people, and the ones that make you swallow. And if you want to treat an animal for sleepy sickness, you're going to have to give it some energy supplement orally, and you need it to be able to swallow. So the timing's important there. But it's just compounding the hangover from the drought, basically what's happening right now.
What about things like phosphate and that's phosphorus and potassium?
I think you probably better talk to a sheep vet who knows a bit about dairy cows as well, because I think from a sheep getting perspective, it's reasonably simple.
Yeah.
It's good old classical milk fever. It gets really complicated with dairy cows with their massive calcium requirements. So by and large, with sheep, it's usually reasonably simple. Get some calcium into them. We often would suggest that people use a supplement. One like we use metabolic glucose, which has got some some sugar in it effectively, some calcium, some phosphorus. So that covers a few bases anyway, but it probably doesn't need to get much more complicated than that.
Yeah, okay. So scanning numbers are down considerably across the region. That was probably to be expected. But what about the flow and effect of bearings with a flush of green grass?
Not too bad, to be honest. The survey that we did 15 odd years ago, bearings are a big deal when you got lots of triplets, and pretty big deal when you got lots of twins, and not a big deal when you got many singles. And the effect when you load it, take it right the way back, the scanning is well down, so the risk is down. There's virtually no triplets locally. The twin numbers are well back, so the absolute number of bearings is going to be low. And there's not a lot of, the sheep aren't eating big gutfuls of grass. And that was the thing we've always been aware of with bearings, that if ewes are filled up with grass and lambs and fat and urine, that something's got to give, and it'll tend to be the back end. They are not full up with grass, and a lot of them aren't full up with lambs, and they certainly aren't fat.
What are some of those management changes that you've seen in the past, say, 5 to 10 years, Richard? I mean, this is certainly Hawke's Bay's not first rodeo when it comes to dry conditions, that farmers have implemented earlier that has resulted in better sort of animal health outcomes in these circumstances.
Oh, they just made early decisions, basically. And that's right across the board, not just all sheep farmers, it's pretty much everyone. People, you've got a bit of crystal ball gazing. I guess there's people who are even better at that, using other management tools like FarmX, or they've got a second opinion. There's another set of eyes across the farm. But people who commit to, in this example, sheep, to tupping period, basically, like getting animals used to grain, if that's what they're going to use, or pellets, making sure they've got some bulk as well, so making sure that they've got good quality silage. A lot of guys locally, not lots, quite a few now, starting to use brassicas, putting those in specifically for tucker. So there's a real range of things. But I think, when you look back at it, we do generally get a drought about every 4 or 5 years. If it's not a drought, it's the next best thing. And once you start thinking like that, you really need to create a bit of resilience by just creating a system that can cope with that. I've got to be careful not to belittle what's happened to a lot of people who got caught here, but it's 7 years since our last drought. And a lot of us were caught napping. It's not just not the farmers, it's the whole lot of us. It was bad. Yeah.
And a lot of learnings to take forward, I'm sure. Absolutely. I actually enjoyed the article in the latest Farmland of Waihu farmer Erin Train and her supplementary feeding that she decided, nope, bugger it, and got onto it. And it sort of started to see her through, and she started to navigate that. So, there's a lot of great advice around there, and a lot of people out to help as well, Richard, as well, across the board.
Yeah, well, that was interesting. I saw that article too, and I thought I could identify with that a bit, because when you make a decision, it's a positive thing. If you don't make it, it's negative. And she made a decision about the feeding, and obviously made quite a commitment to doing it. She, she bought a lot of tucker, and the ewes took to it well. But something about feeding, knowing you're feeding the animals and adding something to it, and you're getting something back out of it. To have them chasing the bike, and they're not. You're happy every day to go and see them, because you're actually making a difference. You genuinely are making a difference. That was a good article, that one.
It was, absolutely, and it genuinely showed how much farmers genuinely get a deep sense of satisfaction from looking after their animals, and we need to continuously spread that message across the wider New Zealand. Richard, before you go, tonight throughout the show, we're having a bit of fun, because if you won the $34 million jackpot of Lotto Powerball, it would be the second largest draw in Lotto history. So I have to ask you, how would you divvy it up?
It's not fair.
You can keep it all yourself if you'd like.
Think about it. I don't know. I can think of a fairly big chunk of debt that we'd like to pay off for a start. You'd probably like to set the kids up with something, and I guess I could probably give something away to some good cause. I'm not quite sure what that would be. Maybe 34 million. If I took off our debt and gave some to the kids, it'd be about 25 million. Could we give that to farmers to fence off their waterways and, try to make something positive happen in a positive way, rather than banging away on regulation. That'd be nice.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much. A pleasure to have you on Sarah's Country. Richard Hilson from Vet Services in Central Hawke's Bay.
This is Sarah's Country.